Okay, welcome everybody to our first online Active Schools network. Appreciate it's very different to our normal setup. You would normally see us in person, but we hope you find this webinar useful and informative. Hopefully most of you know me. I'm Wendy Newton. I'm Head of Children and Young People at Active Surrey, and my able co-pilot today is Sarah Williams, our Active Schools Manager. So just in terms of housekeeping, for those of you who may not have been involved in these webinars before, as much as we would love this to be slightly more interactive, this is the first time we've done one of these online webinars, so we thought we'd keep it simple for today. So you will be automatically muted and your cameras will be switched off once you've joined the webinar. Please do though use the chat feed, enter comments and questions, and we will address those questions throughout the webinar. We will also at the end be able to download all of your questions, as well as sharing the slides and obviously the webinar recording. So you will receive all of this information, and any questions that we can't answer in the chat feed, we will follow up with you afterwards. So I guess if I can just sort of say, please bear with us. This is the first time, as I say, we've done a live network, so we may experience some technical issues, but fingers crossed it all goes to plan. So just to start off and sort of set the tone for this network, we really appreciate that the landscape for schools has been incredibly hectic, very worrying, very stressful and continuously changing. But we hope that you will agree that physical activity is probably now more important than ever for all of your pupils and your staff, albeit not easy to deliver at the moment in any way, shape or form. So we really hope that this session is going to provide you with a lot of support information, some of which is available now, and obviously some will be available in September. So in terms of the agenda for today, we're just going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes going through what's on your screen now. As I said, quite a lot of information to share. There will be web links within the slides, so when we share this with you as a PDF afterwards, you will be able to click those web links and access the resources and the things that we're going to be referring to today. So I'm going to move on then and start off by just sharing with you some national insight, which I'm sure is going to resonate with a lot of you. Sport England have been gathering data on physical activity levels for both adults and children throughout the whole coronavirus pandemic. And the key findings are on the slide that you can see now, but one of perhaps the most alarming things to note is that only 19% of young people have been doing the recommended 1 hour a day of physical activity. And what's starting to happen now that we are coming out of lockdown and returning to the new normal is that we're starting to see already a decline in activity levels. Now, some of these figures might be useful for you to share with your senior leadership teams within schools, just in terms of making the case for the importance of continuing to deliver as much PE, school sport and physical activity as you possibly can. Other data that we have from national partners from the Youth Sport Trust, they have been doing a huge amount of insight collation directly with teachers and parents and children and young people. And this slide is just kind of a snapshot of some of the things that they have gathered. And I've also just highlighted some key points here, but I think it's probably, again, something that you're all very well aware of, that children's mental health and their well-being has been severely affected during this time, as it has for many of us. But again, the importance that we're placing on PE, school sport and physical activity has never been higher on the agenda for us to support those young people that are going to need us the most. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah now to take you through the next few slides.
Afternoon all, I hope you're all well. So yeah, I'm just going to bring the kind of initial section to a close and give you a brief summary of some of the feedback that we've got from schools during the summer term. And whilst you're reading the left-hand side of the slides, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to everybody that initially filled out the audit right at the beginning of lockdown, and also to those head teachers and PE teachers that really kindly gave up their time to sit and talk to the Active Schools team around what's happening, the feelings within their schools, and more importantly, it kind of gave us the opportunity to shape the support that you are needing during the summer and also during the autumn. So a thank you for you from us. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there's lots of things that you're telling us that you need, and we have been working through those during the summer, and hopefully you would have seen a lot of that information coming through. However, we do appreciate that there's so much stuff there. It's incredibly overwhelming. So what we wanted to do is trying to, over the next few slides, just give you an update in terms of what we've provided and our movements for the autumn term. But just before I do move on, I just really wanted to draw your attention to the right-hand side, where the Youth Sport Trust have also been auditing the schools throughout the summer term in terms of PE and the education of being physically educated through the curriculum. And it's really pleasing to see the second bullet point around the 63% will continue to offer PE on the curriculum in the autumn term, which is great, because the conversations that we're having with schools is it's the how, it's the when, it's the what do we do. But the key thing here is that it needs to continue. That the mental health and well-being of young people coming back into schools can be heavily supported through PE and physical activity. So whatever that looks like in your school, we are here to help you. So moving on, Wendy, let's have a look at what we have been already doing. So these three next slides hopefully won't be that unfamiliar to you. Inside Active Schools is one of our communication methods that we have always had. They used to be termly, and we made a concerted effort at the beginning of lockdown to really look at a coordinated central approach to how we communicate to you. So we then adapted the Inside Active Schools newsletter to become weekly. We wanted it to be very succinct, with 4 items each week, which always included a physical activity or a challenge element to it, and then some national updates. So that's been going out weekly now since probably week 1 or 2. And then feedback from PE leads and teachers. You wanted to have something very specific that you could send out directly to schools, directly to homes. So on the same time we sent out Inside Active Schools, we created and send out Inside Active Homes, so you can send it out through your network, through parent mail. So we hope that's at least helped you try and engage with your pupils that have been at home. And then on the left-hand side, we've got our very, very popular PhysiFun resources, which a lot of you have in your schools already. And at the beginning, we looked at just recreating a number of those to reflect kind of physical and social distancing. And we also then took the opportunity to record some of the games so you could see how they could be used at home and at school. So if you have received Inside Active Schools and parked it somewhere and ready to read it another time, we recommend that you really dig those out, because there's a heck of a lot of resources on there that will now be able to help you as you go. Next slide, Wend. So this is our virtual Surrey School Games. So the reason why we have created the virtual is obvious. Maybe not so obvious to a lot of the schools is during the summer term we have our Surrey School Games Festival, which is a coordination of local district winners that come along to St George's and compete against other schools. So that element, obviously, we had to pause for a year. So at the beginning of the summer term, we created our virtual school games, which has been really, really fun. I hope those 70 odd schools and 1,500 plus young people have found value in it. And we've really tried to engage Key Stage 1 as well as going up to Key Stage 3 and 4. If you are on the webinar and you're in the top 5 at the moment, well done to you all. It's been absolutely amazing to see different schools engage. And what's been really pleasing from a school's point of view is that we've had schools engage with this that actually necessarily engage with the non-virtual school games. So that's really great. And at the end of this week, we will have a Surrey champion in the primary school. So keep a look out on social media and our website. And then this will be continuing into the autumn term, but I'll give you a bit of a breakdown later on. And the final slide from myself is Surrey Outdoor Learning and Development. So most of you would have heard of SOLD. It's a Surrey County Council partner organisation. They're hosted much like Active Surrey. And they have been absolutely brilliant from the get-go. By the nature of their products and services, they're outdoor learning. So they've been able to go in with updated risk assessments and face-to-face activity within schools from literally March onwards. What we would recommend is if you have only used SOLD for your OAA elements of your curriculum, have a think about moving that now into the autumn term and connecting with SOLD. They've got a bespoke offer for every single school, and they're just absolutely brilliant. So bringing OAA, which generally is summer term in terms of your residentials, can easily be moved now into the autumn term, and SOLD are waiting to basically support you where they can. So back over to Wendy. She's going to give you a quick update on health and safety advice and support from partners.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, so this is now moving on to the support that's available from our national partners. So these are the partners who are working alongside DFE and AFPI, if you're not aware of them, the Association for Physical Education. They've really taken the lead on the health and safety and the risk assessment side of PE, school sport and physical activity. We've shared some of these resources with you already, but if you haven't seen them yet, I would encourage you to take a look. They've produced 2 resources, one of which has since been updated since it was launched earlier in the year. So they have produced a resource which helps schools to interpret the government guidance that came out a couple of months ago now around physical activity, school sport and PE lessons and how to put things into place. Alongside that, they also have a FAQ, frequently asked questions document, and quite a lot of the questions that we've had through from schools are picked up within this document. It is very specific to your subject area. It is about physical education. So any questions that you have around delivery, in particular concerns that you may have about how you're going to approach the delivery in September, you are highly likely to find the answers and perhaps some further guidance in these documents. So we would urge you to take a look at those. The other organisation that you obviously, most of you will be aware of, we work very closely with, is the Youth Sport Trust. Their website is hugely extensive in terms of resources. They have got a huge amount of support available for schools. They've broken it down as well into different age groups. It's catering for SEND pupils, and there are lots and lots of guidance documents and resources, as well as they're partnering with Complete PE. So there's also lots of actual activity resources there. We know that guidance and advice is something that schools need, but we also know that you are desperate for resources, actual activities that you can just get on and deliver within a short, sharp session within a school, but in a safe way. So again, there's lots of resources available through our national partners. So again, have a look at this website. It takes a little while to get used to navigate, but there is a specific support for schools tab, and you will be able to find all of the things that we're sharing with you today on there. And then a couple of other national partners, which again, some of you will already be connected to, will be familiar with. Create Development are one of our recommended providers of a scheme of work for physical education, Real PE. They have a digital platform now called Jasmine, and they have made that available throughout lockdown for schools and families free of charge, and that is still available to you to access. So again, would urge you to have a look at their resources, because there are lots of things that you can pick up and run with, lots of digital resources there as well. And similarly, iMoves, another organisation that you will be familiar with, very well known for their active learning activities, and they have started to focus more recently as well on mental health and well-being, which many of us have. So again, a wealth of resources on their website, and at the moment still continuing to offer that to schools for free. Okay, so it was a whistle-stop tour and a lot of information to absorb, but as I said, we will share the slides, you will have access to the links. I want to move on now quickly into the next section, because this is probably the bit that we've updated since the guidance has changed in the last couple of weeks and the announcement of the PE and school sports premium funding. So in terms of government guidance that came out to schools with regards to September, if you haven't seen this, I would advise you to, at the very least, go and read through the physical activity section. We were very encouraged to see that there is an explicit reference to physical activity in this guidance. And it may be for some of you, if you're not involved in SLT, you may not have needed or been asked to read this guidance, but certainly your senior leadership teams will have digested this guidance. But there's quite a lot in there about physical activity. I've summarised it in bullet point form here. I'm not going to read this to you, but hopefully it does give a sense of what the government are really pushing schools to not drop PE from the curriculum in September. They do appreciate that it is going to be difficult to deliver, but there is, as we are saying throughout this webinar, lots of support and resources available. So those are the kind of key points in here. Probably the final bullet point is an interesting one to note, that the government obviously are expecting as much PE to continue in September, but they're working obviously towards normal curriculum provision returning by the summer term. So what we're going to be doing in the autumn term and spring term is hopefully going to be a temporary measure before we can move back to normal delivery. Linked to that government guidance, and again from one of our national partners, the Youth Sport Trust have produced a returning to school sport framework and planning tool. So this takes those key messages with regards to physical activity and puts them into the context in terms of your subject area. So this document was also shared recently in Inside Active Schools. You can access it again via this link. And I noticed the other day, unfortunately, we have managed to clash with a webinar that YST are actually running today. However, their webinars are all recorded and posted on their website. So there is a webinar took place earlier today around PE post-COVID. That usually will be uploaded the day after. So if you want to watch that webinar and get further advice, then that should be available from tomorrow. And then moving on to some good news, hopefully you are all aware now that the government announced this at midnight, funnily enough, on Saturday the 4th of July. Whether or not they did that when they got home from the pub, whether or not they made the decision at the pub, who knows, but it's great news. So we are thrilled that your funding for your ring fence funding for PE, school sport and physical activity is going to continue into the next academic year. So there are some key points that you will want to be aware of in terms of this funding. The 5 key indicators and the criteria for the spending hasn't changed. We are told that that will possibly be updated to some extent in September, but not drastically so. One of the things you may not be aware of that we only just found out recently is that there is still a requirement for schools to upload their online reporting. And I'll come on to that a little bit more in a second. Swimming data they appreciate is going to be limited, and that's fine. It just needs to be reflected. Whatever you have got needs to be reported. And then the final thing to note, which you hopefully are aware of, is that they have approved carry forward of any underspend of PE and school sport premium funding. But they have confirmed that that funding any carry forward from this, from 2019-20 does need to be spent by the 31st of March. So it's something worth noting, perhaps updating head teachers about. So many of you will know the 5 key indicators already around that premium funding, and the annual reporting requirements haven't changed. There is a specific template that the national partners, AFP, YST and DFE have produced. So if you aren't using that template already, we would strongly advise you to use that template. So I'm just going to move on now to the kind of last section of the webinar, really, which is around those 5 key indicators. So what we want to do is kind of share with you what Active Surrey are going to be doing in terms of their support from September, but we've put this into the context of those 5 key indicators. The point being that everything that Active Surrey do in terms of school support is relevant to one of those indicators. Therefore, your PE and school sport premium funding can be used on those support services. So I'm going to hand back to Sarah, who is going to take you through some of those sections, and then I will come back and conclude for you. Sarah?
Brilliant, thank you very much. So moving on, like Wendy said, we've tried to highlight in the top left-hand corner which key indicator sits perfectly with the solutions that our partners and Active Surrey can provide schools. One of which is the POWERS campaign, which is a campaign that we've been going going into its third year possibly now. And it's our campaign that helps and supports schools achieve their 30 minutes of physical activity a day. So at the last count, I think we've probably got about 150 schools that have pledged to improve 1 or 7 of the areas of the umbrella, which is wonderful. It's a free campaign, and just by pledging, what schools then receive is a resource booklet with lots of ideas to get kind of cross-curricular physical activity into lessons. So by all means, if you log off today and want to pledge, you can do so on our website. So a couple of, excuse me, a couple of new additions for the autumn term for you to be aware of is it's going through a little bit of an update. So what we've done is we've recognised that actually one area of the umbrella, which was active assemblies, wasn't working quite as well as we wanted it to. So we've moved that out and put in active mind, which is really, really linked to enable us now to look at supporting physical activity through our recovery curriculum in relation to mental health and physical activity. So there's going to be lots of resources coming out in the new year to connect the physical activity and mental health and wellness together. So keep an eye out for that one. And then the second new addition is we have a new course that's going to be run by the Active Schools team, which is Active Play Through Fizzy Fund. So again, using a really well-known resource and upskilling our lunchtime supervisors and play leaders and TAs, really look at how active our playgrounds can be, looking at kind of physical distancing, looking at mapping out the playgrounds, really to try and engage everybody as often as we can throughout the school day. And it's worth noting here that it's around the whole school change, it's around behaviour change for staff and behaviour change for young people, and ultimately long term it's about changing the culture of how we perceive physical activity across the whole school. So if you haven't signed up, please do. So moving forward on to our next update. Most of you will be aware, certainly if you have applied for School Games Mark previously, that School Games Mark this year was paused for the very obvious reason. But what you should have been receiving is, if you have been active in your districts and if you have been active in the virtual Surrey School Games, you should have received recognition certificates and logos for that, which you can then use to be able to recognise for SLT to parents. If you haven't received those yet and you think you should, please do get in touch with one of the Active Schools leads. Key Stage 1 star mark for infant schools and those spaces of primaries, you will have noticed that actually we made a decision to open up the Key Stage 1 application a little bit earlier. We recognised that probably this summer term was a little less busy than it usually is, to give you a little bit of time to have a look at the criteria. We have made some changes. We recognise that some of the questions are restricted because of the lockdown, but we've made some updates in terms of additional points around planning and preparation for what you would have potentially done in the spring and summer. So if you were thinking, oh, I'm not going to apply, or I'm not going to reapply, have a look again. The way that Star Mark has been created is that we wanted to give every opportunity to all schools to at least get to a 1 star. And that window closes on the 23rd of October. So plenty of time to have a look at that over the summer. And then moving on, we've got, as always, a comprehensive teacher training programme on the right-hand side. I will let you look at that at your leisure. But what I wanted to draw your attention to on the left-hand side was our new approach to kind of sports leadership. So most of you will recognise that our flagship leadership training opportunities are Sports Crew and Fizzy Fun Champions. And as a team, we really toyed with not wanting to risk losing the quality and the content of those two solutions by trying to make them fit a virtual world. So what we did in the end is we decided that we would create a new set of training for leaders in year 5 and 6, predominantly for the autumn term. But if it's successful and schools are really enjoying it, appreciating it, we long term we could add this to our solutions. So come October or come September, we will be launching our sport organiser squads, and that really is to fit in with the autumn term school games focus on intra-school competitions. It's worth noting that from conversations with schools, there was a lot of schools that say, well, actually, we're okay with face-to-face, but some schools were saying, absolutely no, it's going to have to be virtual. So we've actually created two training platforms, one of which is the virtual training, which is essentially training the trainer, so the teacher, with a very comprehensive teacher guide, and it's going to be complemented with short videos from the Active Schools team, along with the activity demonstrations from local schools. And then you can, the flexibility around that, as much as the face-to-face training is delivered in 3 hours, the virtual element gives you the flexibility to, you know, just to select a section of them and maybe deliver that in a PE lesson or deliver that with a cohort of pupils. And then the face-to-face option is exactly the same, but it's where one of the Active Schools team will come in and physically deliver that for you. So that's coming out in September, in the autumn term, so look out for those, as is a lot of the teacher training on the right-hand side. Okay, and finally, the autumn term programme is going to look significantly different to what it has been in the last 7, 8, 9 years. We are continuing with the virtual Surrey School Games. It will be virtual. We've had lots of conversations with lots of our counterparts up and down the country, with our schools locally, and the consensus is that the autumn term will pretty much be all intra-school focus, so very, very little inter-form competitions between schools, only maybe in small clusters where schools feel comfortable. So the virtual Surrey School Games will be featuring throughout the whole of the autumn term, very much like the virtual school games over the summer. There will be 3 sports, and we've chosen to go down the sport route this time as opposed to the personal challenge, recognising that actually everybody will be back in school. We need to reconnect them with sport and physical activity, and we wanted to have this team atmosphere again. So the 3 sports will be an athletics quad kids type personal best format. We are reintroducing rounders. It has been in the non-virtual school games a couple of years ago, but it lends itself really well to the virtual world. And then we're working with Star Steppers, who deliver our county dance festival anyway, and they're going to be doing some pre-recording dance moves to get the groove on, that type of thing. So look out for those. They are going to be linked again to the values, and formats for that will come out through your Active Schools leads and officers in the autumn term. So back over to Wendy for the last element, which will be the membership side of things and additional offers. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So the final service just that we wanted to raise, a lot of you are member schools already, so whether or not you're looking to renew your membership with us next year, we hope so. Obviously, we are having to adapt this offer as well to meet the requirements for autumn term. We also think that these networks, this is possibly one of the positive things that has come out of this situation, as I'm sure you are all used to doing now, is more online meetings, more networks, more webinars, more training virtually. So we are going to continue to try and do that in the autumn term, not just because we have to, but actually we think it may well be quite an effective way of working with you in the future. It's going to negate the need for you to obviously get released from timetable, to travel to central venue networks and training opportunities. We do appreciate, though, that you do value best practice sharing between schools with colleagues outside of your local areas, and so we are going to look to facilitate that. We have kept, as I said at the beginning, this webinar relatively simple, but we do hope to be able to do something slightly more interactive in the future with breakout rooms and things like that. So we hope we will be able to facilitate that best practice sharing in the autumn term anyway. So the membership offer for next year looks relatively similar to this year, but this is the basic level membership that you're looking at. We are actually looking to introduce 2 other levels of membership. We're still finalising the details of these, and they will be circulated to schools in September. But we are going to maintain our basic membership package. We're also looking at a leadership training package. for those schools who really do want to focus on training some young leaders to using that young workforce within your school environment as advocates and as a workforce for their peers. And then the third package will be a slightly more expensive but more bespoke package. So we have a menu of different services that we want to be able to offer to schools who really do need more support, more specific support. We're going to be working with some PE specialists to bring you some consultancy service opportunities. And as I say, the bespoke service will basically be slightly more expensive, but you will have a wider range of services to choose from that will be very, very specific to your school needs. So the costings really at the moment are still being finalised, but we will have a basic level membership package for around about the same kind of price as we have had in the past, so about £800 per school, going up then to a slightly more expensive package that's going to be around about £2,000. Obviously, your PE and school sports premium funding has been continued, and some of you will obviously have a certain amount of underspend. So if you want to discuss with us whether or not this is an effective way to use that funding, please do come and talk to us about what we can provide you in terms of a bespoke package. Okay, I'm conscious of time and information overload as always, so we're going to kind of bring things to a close now. I guess we wanted to try and summarise with some kind of key actions for you guys as schools in terms of your planning in preparation for September. So we would urge you to use the guidance and the resources that are available. There are lots of them, I appreciate. If you have trouble digesting everything, then please do come and speak to us. We would urge you to adopt a blended approach in the autumn term, to work with us to use young leaders as much as you possibly can to help provide intra-school activity, which is really going to be the focus for the autumn term. The virtual Surrey School Games is there to support you. As I've said, we're looking to try and facilitate some best practice sharing with you, so please do join in on that, on those networks, which we will hear about from September. The one thing that we haven't yet mentioned, but just wanted to mention now, which will be available again in September, is that because there is so much information available and so many schools are asking us for individual activity resources for specific groups or with specific reference to social distancing and stuff that's still relevant for those who may well still be at home, we are looking to pull together a kind of one-stop shop resource with all of that information in it. So again, we'll be sharing that with you in September. And I guess the final point is, please do keep talking to us. We are working over the summer period, so we are available to speak to you, to support you in preparation for September and to aid your planning. So if you need any support at all, want to discuss any of these resources in more detail, or have some very, very specific questions about what's going on in your school, about any requirements that your head teacher is imposing that you want to try and work out how to deliver, please do come and talk to us, because if we don't have the answers, we will 9 times out of 10 be able to signpost you to somebody that does. Okay, just finally on the Q&A, this is a kind of just little snapshot really of the way that FAQ document for AFPI is laid out, and hopefully it will pick up and answer the majority of your questions. We will be, as I said at the beginning, downloading the Q&A, the chat feed that has obviously been taking place throughout the webinar, and we will share with you answers to those questions. But that brings us to the end of the webinar. I think all we can really say at this stage is, again, thank you so much for everything that you have done for all of the children and young people in Surrey, to support your parents, for those pupils who have been at home. We cannot begin to imagine what it's been like to be working in a school over the last few months. So please give yourselves a big, big pat on the back. We are here to support you. We will be here to support you in September. We are available over the summer if you need us. But for now, that brings us to the end of the webinar. So we just want to wish you a very well-deserved, restful summer break, and we look forward to seeing you in some form in September. Many thanks.
Thanks all.